First of all, this is a great opportunity right now because myself and Molly from You Seem Normal are going to be doing a couple of videos just talking to you all about different things that are in our lives and may be related to our disorders, the symptoms, the traits. We're going to have a great conversation about it, but we've been having technical difficulties the entire time. And this is our first time meeting, and I think we did an amazing job handling it. I want to first of all introduce you to Molly. So, Molly, if you would love to say hello and just tell them a little bit about your channel, that'd be amazing.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm so glad that we are meeting. And I also think that we handled the technical difficulties very well. I mean, of
Yeah.
course, in a way, they're unexpected, but sometimes you have to expect the unexpected. But yes, alas, I think we handled them very well. So, hello, my name is Molly. I am from the channel You Seem Normal on YouTube. I have created this a little over 5 years ago, and I've been posting videos around mental health and mental illness ever since I got a couple of diagnoses myself, right at the end of my college career, just to bring awareness to these disorders and also that mental illness does not discriminate. And so that's kind of where my channel name is coming from of like, you seem normal. That's just a reminder that there's not a look, to mental illness, for example, and it can affect anyone. And normal is just a construct. So I talk about that a lot as well. So my content is primarily around OCPD, which is mostly why we're here today, partly. That's a overlap that we have. Perfectionism, anger, depression, anxiety, and then just random kind of self-help dealios that can make your life more joyful. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Let's do this thing. This is going to be a lot of fun. And first of all, thank you for replying back. This is one thing if you deal with anybody who has OCPD, and I'm not going to talk about ADHD in particular, but if you they have OCPD, they're typically going to be really prompt, on time, replying to messages. Um, what do you think? Is that accurate? Is that an accurate assessment, or what do you think?
I definitely think so. There is a phenomenon called email anxiety now, and mostly my email anxiety kind of revolves around being prompt and urgent.
You brought up email anxiety, and I've never heard the terminology email anxiety, but
Yeah.
um, so for I guess I didn't introduce myself, and I'll come back into this part. But I'm Shannon Williams, the OCPD coach. What I love to do is help you build a healthier relationship with progress, and everything that we do on the channel is geared towards that element, progress, how we look at it, how we define it, and how we appreciate it without always narrowing it down to just being financial success, business success, or stature. So that's really what I do. And I wanted to come back to that point you brought up about the email anxiety because I deal with this also and I never put a term to it before, but I actually in the anger, so there's two things, the email anxiety and anger. I actually have a tiny it's a tiny part of me that gets upset when I have an email that I have to reply to. And especially if it's a long email, I don't know if this is you tell me a little bit more about the email anxiety though, because I want to know about that term.
Yeah, I think it could be a lot of different things, but it's sort of just weird to think about email as being relatively new in in history, but that for a lot of people, that can bring so much stress and anxiety from basically opening this app on your phone. And so part of that is timing. So feeling like you have to reply by, I don't know, even within the hour sometimes, by the end of the day. So feeling that pressure to always be on. I think part of it is trying to reach inbox zero, I feel like, because, right, so basically having no emails in your inbox because you feel like, oh, then I accomplished the day. I was able to tackle everything that came through my inbox well.
Yeah.
And sometimes I am in like very much in inbox zero mode and I want that, but other times I'm like, no, that's a construct. That doesn't mean I was productive today or not productive today because it can be kind of like almost dangerous in that way. What do you experience with email?
I associate it with email and text messages. Anytime people are reaching out to me, for me, it has to be the right time, as you mentioned.
Hmm.
Timing is very important. And I have times where I'm ready to socialize. And then I have times where I don't want to socialize because I'm so focused on getting something done or I'm completely checked out. So if there is an email that comes in and the email is going to require me to do a lot of critical thinking, that is when I typically will get either what is the terminology for analysis paralysis, where
Hmm.
I have
Yep.
too much thinking I have to do. And that will cause me to say, okay, I don't want to use any of my executive function to email right now, so I'll put it off. But when that happens, as you mentioned, you might miss a deadline, or for me, I have completely forgotten. Another thing I want to add, this actually just happened to me this past week, which was crazy. I had mail come in, and it's the same thing with mail. I get mail and don't instantly open my mail. I'll get it, get the stack. I'll sort it first, just looking at who came in, and I'll put the stuff that I know can be trashed and instantly trash it, and then stuff that I know might be important, I'll separate and say, okay, I'll open it when I get a chance. And that might not take a long time. It might just take 5 minutes for me to get some water, sit down, and get my mind ready because I have to context switch to receive potential annoying or bad news or a task. But it really is the same thing with any form of communication, even family. And I would love to talk about this one a little later as well. But with my wife or my son, if I'm not in the state of mind to focus on that conversation or whatever they're asking, then it becomes a burden. And I want to tack something on. I think with and in any point in time, correct me. I'm still I talk about stuff from my experience and then from experiences that I've had from other folks. But it's mainly from my experience because I live my life. And what I notice is that I tend to think that people are thinking what I'm thinking, and that if you know, if you know that I'm not looking at emails or doing any of that right now, you are personally attacking me and trying to disrupt my train of thought. I think that's the best way for me to put that. What do you think? I mean, is that something that you also could relate to, or do you have a different take on that?
I definitely relate to that. I think that I fear that the other people are even thinking about me in a negative way. I almost imagine the other person thinking that way about me, and I hate it. I really don't want that. I don't want people to think that I'm incompetent. And so I think that's part of where like the urgency of replying comes in. But then when there is that urgency, like you were saying, it's pretty off-putting.
Yeah.
It makes me not want to do it. And I do the exact same thing with my mail. Like I have a couple of tasks that are sitting on my kitchen counter. One of them is activating an HSA card, and it
Yes.
would take 2 seconds,
Yes.
and I haven't done it.
Mhm. No, I get you. I brought up and if you see me adjusting my focus, it's just because I look like potato. But I had the exact same. So you mentioned the SHA card and activating it. That was the example I wanted to bring up. I had a credit card since I was a college student. It was my freshman college credit card. But I do. Have you heard of Dave Ramsey before? Debt
Yes.
free.
Yep.
So I'm a Dave Ramsey guy now. I try to just not use debt as best as I can. So I don't use my credit cards. And I had small things like $5 things that would automatically come off and then I repay it. No idea what happened to them. But Discover sent me something in the mail a few in February and they said if you don't use this card, we're going to deactivate the card. I wasn't using Jira during this time frame because I was trying to get a bunch of other crap done and I wasn't being efficient. And I forgot about it. And they actually deactivated my card. I got the alert from Credit Karma and they said, "Hey, you just closed one of your accounts." I'm like, "No, I didn't." And so it hit me bad with that because I had not prioritized it at all and completely let something like that slip. And that's just one example of how when you say email anxiety, I would even broaden it up for me just to be communication anxiety.
Mhm.
If I don't prioritize it, it runs the risk of jacking stuff up. I'll leave it at jacking stuff up. And it's funny, I see you writing stuff, And I have a whiteboard. You might even be able to see a little bit of it, but I have a whiteboard right here, and I'm literally writing notes as we go, just to as things.
Classic.
Yeah, that's what we do. We keep lists and we keep notes. But you mentioned
Absolutely.
your other diagnosis or diagnoses. Would you care to elaborate on those and what those are and how, or
Mhm.
just that first part first?
I've been, diagnosed with generalized anxiety and depression, but I feel like those are so spoken about that it's not the main focus of sort of my channel to bring awareness to those specifically. So actually, the diagnosis that I'm talking about, I was diagnosed with both OCPD and another diagnosis called IED at the same time. So IED stands for intermittent explosive disorder. It is an impulse control disorder, and it sort of looks like being so fast to anger and rage and not being able to stop those actions. And so it can be smaller instances throughout a year's time, or it could be sort of bigger ones. Of course, like if you don't manage your anger well, there can be really severe consequences of that.
Mhm.
But I also experienced this sort of anger problems when I was a child as well. And I was just able to put this label on it, 5 years ago or so. And it was also in conjunction with OCPD. So that's a little bit about intermittent explosive disorder, which I also don't think is very well known.
Yeah, I was gonna. I remember I watched one of your videos where you were really, really transparent about that. And it might have been a few years ago, might have been an
Mhm.
older when I went back and watched. And I thought it was, first of all, brave of you because I have anger issues. I definitely have anger issues as the term that everybody normalizes is just anger issues. But I don't think we talk enough about that. And as you mentioned, in conjunction with another disorder such as OCPD, because I can imagine I quickly get angry. And we talked about this. I talked about the emails, the disruptions. I always feel attacked. And when I feel attacked, I go into fight mode. So
Mhm.
for you, I've never heard of IED before. And I don't know, I don't want to, derail it too much, but what did they, what was the correlation that they made between the OCPD and the IED? What was that?
That is a great question, and I think it's still definitely relevant to what I experienced today. OCPD, as our personalities are generally we're very rigid in our procedures and our processes and how we do things. We have a very strong tie to our morals, so what we believe is right and wrong. And so if other people don't, fit into that lane and do things as we believe that they're supposed to, we can get really upset. And so it sort of ties into that not being super flexible mindset, and then also the shoulds. So I'm like, oh, on the road, you actually should be doing this other thing and you're not. When I have those deep seated beliefs that is sort of related to the OCPD, it happens to eventually explode in anger, which is really what the IED is like. So it's sort of like the OCPD is feeding into the IED.
Okay, and you said explodes in anger, and when you say that, I think of a volcano that has to build
Mhm.
up and then finally explode. So, are you saying that is that situation where, let's say, if it's the same thing, you're in traffic, for instance, I'm using a small example, and one car cuts you off, that doesn't instantly just piss you off, but let's say now the third car has just cut you off. Is that the point where it would explode for you? It has to just build up, or is it just instant immediately?
I would say it's a combination of both. So it can definitely be multiple things, within an hour or within a drive, for example, that you can kind of trace back. Like, this was the last straw. This had just happened to me. And at this point, I was unable to take it anymore and I had to act out my anger. But it also could be you don't see any of that correlation when you look back at all. And you're like, I have no idea why I reacted so colorfully
Yeah.
when I did, and I can't really connect it to anything. So I kind of see it being both, and I actually appreciate your example of being on the road.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe you got this from the video you watched actually, but that is one of the main places that I tend to express my anger is actually on the road,
Yeah.
which is of course not very safe. So,
I guess that's what I didn't even think about the video. I've used this example before because that's exactly when I have it as well. Um, it's the rule following. So when people don't follow the rules, the optimization and then the insensitivity of it all of that just combined. And I was going to ask if you think it could be related to one more thing because this is where I see my anger tend to happen most of the time. It tends to always be related to my stress level. So if I'm already driving for me is already a stressful situation because you are literally like it's a life or death situation anytime you're on the road. And with that, the amount of focus you have to have, all of that, it just seems like I'm at a high level of stress. So anything that disrupts it, even if it's a loud, my 4-year old just being loud and he's not doing anything, before that we could be having a great time. It seems like that could set me off. I'm like, dude, shh. And then I have that
yeah.
moment right away, right afterwards. And I don't know if this is the moment you were talking about, but I have it immediately afterwards or a couple of seconds where it's like, I overreacted. That wasn't fair. And then I have to go and apologize or explain. I try to explain why I reacted and tell them it wasn't right, but that's just what was going on in my head. Oh man, it's weird. Talking about anger is really weird.
Yeah. I I believe that it's one of the most, if not the most stigmatized emotion, especially for people who have a hard time handling that emotion, because there's a lot of stigma with that one.
Yeah.
But what you were saying about driving being inherently stressful is also the experience I have. I recently had a negative just time driving, and I actually just had an appointment with my therapist when we were talking about this 2 days ago. So
Okay.
shout out. I had just gotten off of a very stressful event at work. And so I think that was also contributing to that baseline stress level was already
Yeah.
very high. And I didn't do anything in between the event and driving, which of course is also stressful to me, to sort of manage that
Yeah.
or even get ready for the next stressful piece, which was the driving. And so that's actually what I'm going to be working on is putting some space in between those things.
That's a great idea to have that cool down time. And what you mentioned with that baseline stress level, something my therapist told me when I was diagnosed was that having OCPD is closely related to having PTSD. And she said that she showed me the ebb and flow. She did it on a chart, and she said the traditional brain without OCPD has this ebb and flow of stress and anxiety throughout the day that goes up and down. But she said with OCPD, you're actually at a naturally elevated stress level by default. So you're always at that higher level of stress, and anything can spike it at any point in time. So when you mentioned that, that's exactly what it just made me think about was that what is our baseline for stress? It is a lot different for us. First of all, we got to clap it up for ourselves. The fact that we have made it to this age in life dealing with this and dealing with that high level of stress at all times and haven't gone crazy on folks, that's a huge deal. So if you are somebody watching this and you deal with this, please pat yourself on the back. You just That's a whole nother thing with compliments and receiving the compliments. We are being serious. This is not easy. It requires you to manage it at a higher degree at all times. And you deal with the stress of knowing that you could just explode at any
Yeah.
point in time. It's not an easy life to live knowing all of that. I think we just become desensitized to an extent because we get so used to doing it and we get used to finding ways to cope with it. Do you want to add anything else in before I move on to anything?
Yeah, I'll add a lot of times people and I think rightfully so, are confused about what OCPD is versus OCD. One of the things that is most interesting to me about the distinction is those living with OCPD oftentimes do not know sort of the personality that they have or see the maladaptive side of some of the traits that they have, whereas those living with OCD they're cognizant of, sort of their obsessions and compulsions and they want to change. How did that relate? I forget.
No, I mean, we were talking about the. I think where you were going with it was us expecting everybody to think like us, not understanding that we're the ones that are looking at it in this way, and everybody
Mhm.
else is not. So the stress level that we give ourselves or that we have is not the same stress level or care that everybody else that doesn't have OCPD also deals with, and with OCD. And I love that you brought this up
Mhm.
because I think that's why OCPD is not as well diagnosed or known because of the fact that you don't typically know that there's something going on. I think it
Mhm.
a lot of times takes somebody from the outside to come in that cares about you and has the patience to deal with you long enough to explain like, okay, this might not be normal or this might be an issue. And then on top of that, people with OCPD are typically high achieving or high performing folks where they're at jobs, getting promotions, working hard, doing everything right. And they're like, well, there's nothing wrong with me. I just don't take vacations. I just don't take days off. And I guess to this point, let's start pivoting because I think this is a great transition. So I know me, I worked on my wedding day, and I just talked about this on a live stream I just did, and it was crazy that my wife even dealt with me doing that. But she has OCPD as well, so it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, we found out a lot. We have a lot in common. We both have some form of ADHD or ADD and OCPD, and it made so much sense. But with me working on my wedding day, to me that was normal. To me, it was if I took the day off, it would have been slacking because I didn't have to take the day off to just get married that day. I was doing it at nighttime. I didn't have to do it. But that was before I had the diagnosis, before I knew that I was dealing with it. So everything was normal to me and everything was great. And it wasn't until my wife is a stay-at-home mom. She's been like that for the past few years. And with that, I just tend to put all the money into bills. I just pay bills and take care of all of that stuff. And I never really like buying things for myself. So it was Father's Day, and I never wanted her to buy me a gift. I kept saying, no, 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 no. And one day it led to a disagreement because she told me, she said, you never let me buy you anything. Never. If it's Father's Day, your birthday, you always just say, we'll put the money, keep the money, this and that. And that was the day that forced me to go get therapy because I realized this was causing an issue that I couldn't explain. I just thought it was normal for me not to. So yeah, that's that. I would love to know what your experience was that made you say, okay, cool, let me get this checked out if it was somebody that helped you out or what that experience was like for you.
That's very interesting that you and your wife both have OCPD. I would love to hear about um how that works. What's that like?
Okay.
Um, a couple of the times when you were talking, you mentioned the word normal, and I was like, yeah, that's so funny. You were like, I just thought that that was normal. And I'm like, yeah, it seemed normal to us. So that's
Yes.
another sort of intersection with my channel name. But I had kind of I mean, we all have the tough story, but looking back, I also had a tough time leading up to the diagnosis of OCPD. So it did take an outside person for sure. I hadn't heard of this and it wasn't on my radar, as you were kind of saying as well with the frugality piece. I I experienced a mental health crisis at the end of a semester in college and I had to be hospitalized. And it wasn't while I was hospitalized that I got the diagnosis because they're just sort of there to put a band-aid and
Yeah.
send you on your way. But it was that summer when I got back home and I took started to take treatment seriously. And I had a psychiatrist and I had a therapist. And it was the psychiatrist who made that diagnosis as well as the IED one. And it just
Mhm.
made so much sense to me when she was talking about those things
Yeah.
I had just never heard of it before, and I didn't know that any of this stuff was like kind of like you were saying on the outside I was very high achieving. And so I'm like, "Hey everyone, I'm doing just fine. Do you see that?"
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it led to this point of a really serious, mental health crisis because I think part of it was I didn't know how to express the help that I needed because it looked like I was doing so well.
That's You said something in there. So again, I don't like talking like a therapist when they say thank you for sharing. It just sounds so unauthentic. But I do understand that situation, sharing that is something that you chose to do, and I appreciate that. And I wanted to piggyback on something you said. You said, "Do you see that? I'm doing just fine. Do you see that?" And
Mhm.
I don't know why that stood out to me, but who do we do it for? That's a That's crazy to think about. We try to be perfectionists, work so hard, do everything perfect, but whose book are we doing this to? Who is the rule maker? And I just want to know one thing, if you care to share. When you had the episode that you had in college, was it related to your grades?
Good question. So it wasn't related. I mean, in a way, I feel like a lot of the things in college were related to my grades. It
Hmm.
was actually related to group work, like a group project. It was the
Uh,
very end of a group project. And it was, yeah, so it was working with other people. And I think the working with other people, first of all, very hard to do. Even harder, I would say, for someone with OCPD who has their right way of doing things and has problems with delegating. But knowing that my exam grade or final grade or whatever was going to be impacted by that group work is just that much more stressful. So, yes, it was related to my grades and it was also wrapped up with working with others.
wow, so that was the perfect storm, so to speak, of it because you have everything at that was your final. That was your actual final, like that experience in general. And that's so interesting. Um, we talked about you talked about group projects and delegation, and I'm guessing you were probably the same way, but I was always the kid in school who did the entire project. Like I would just say, "Hey, don't worry about chipping in at all. I got this." And yeah, that
Same.
was the same. Okay, you start so you see a lot of these signs young. It's so telling. It's so telling. But these are positive things. These are not nobody would look at that and say that's an issue. They would say, wow, they would work hard. They did a great job. Do you see that? And that's what
Yep.
you want. That's what you asked. Do you see? Look, I did the whole project. Do you see that? I want you to know. I want the teacher to know I did the whole project. Like this was me. I'm not gonna put them down though, but this was me who did the project. That's
Yeah. Yeah. Part of it's like I have this idea where it's like um when when society is reinforcing your downfall because they they see it as positive. So for example, wow, they're working really hard. That is so awesome. Hard work is really important. So then you keep working hard to keep achieving, but
Mhm.
you aren't stopping to, first of all, analyze why you're doing it, which is kind of what you're saying. Like, who are we trying to be perfect for?
Mhm.
And then, like, realizing the toll that it's taking on you over time. And so by that point, in college, it sort of reached this peak of I was like, okay, I can't keep going like this.
Mhm.
I need help.
Got you. But you made it all the way through college, or a long way through before you got to that point. So,
Yeah. Yep. I only had, so when I went back after after the hospitalization, I only had one semester left. So it was like the second to last semester.
mhm. Okay. And did you, I guess, I know when I went from high school to college, it was a culture shock for me. I was used to being able to be a straight A student without even trying really hard. Because another thing, I'm just adding this in. I always say that our 100% is somebody else's 120. I think we just naturally
Mhm.
have such a high expectation, and we expect things that we say are easy are harder for other folks, but it's just because we've adjusted what we consider to be easy. And I know when I went from high school to college, that was the first time I really felt failure, where I failed a grade, I failed a class, and I said, whoa, maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was. I think my imposter syndrome started there. And I wanted to know if you, first of all, do you deal with imposter syndrome? And the second part of that, did you have a moment like that between that transition of high school to college where it kind of humbled you or made you look at yourself in a different way?
So yeah, I definitely struggle with imposter syndrome in a lot of different regards. And second, as far as my transition from high school to college, I had a weird schedule that did not lend itself well for being someone who had some of the traits that I had at the time, as we're talking about. What I mean by that is, for some reason, when I was in high school, I scheduled my first semester of college to have all of my classes on the same day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then have nothing on Tuesday, Thursday. And I thought this is going to be amazing because I'm going to get all my classes out of the way and I'm
Yeah,
going to have entire days to sit there and grind. And that did not end up going well for me. I felt so paralyzed by
yeah.
all the stuff that I had to do on the Tuesday and Thursday, and so exhausted. I was trying to recuperate from the Monday, Wednesday, Friday that it just didn't work well. And so you were saying it humbled you. That really humbled me. I just went in there thinking I would be able to keep this pace and that would be smart for me to do a scheduling like this. And I learned that was not the case.
That's so, man, the fact that you just said that, I mean, first of all, I heard the all or nothing. Like you want to just get it all out the way. Just give me the rest of and anytime I think about ADHD, OCPD, I always look at it. I know we talk a lot about perfectionism, but for me, when I look back at my life, it's always been about hyper efficiency more than anything. I just want everything to be optimized. I want everything to be structured and make sense. And that's what I heard when you said that was you want to get everything out the way so you can have the rest of the time to do what you need to do. It's just the expectation of what it really, how difficult it would be is what humbled you because we didn't know what it was really like to do everything in that. College is different. It's different. It, I have a whole video about college alone because I think it goes back more into the ADHD and it's a whole nother topic. But traditional college didn't work for me. I had to do accelerated, and I just got my master's in doing accelerated, and it works for me. But I just always thought I was wasting my time, just sitting in a room learning about something I don't need right now, when I know I could be using this time to do something else. And that's why I always thought about the hyper efficiency was it's just not efficient for me to be in this situation right now. I wanted, so while we're on this, I wanted to give some feedback or some advice for folks who might be dealing with a couple of them. We have delegation here. Imposter syndrome was mentioned. We talked about perfectionism. I'm writing these down on this side. And I want to know if you have any specific advice for either of those delegation, perfectionism, or just striving for perfection, imposter syndrome, any of the things that we just covered that you think might be helpful.
Yeah, I think I've recently learned something about delegation slash asking for help. A lot of the times I feel in a work setting, I will just try to take on all the tasks that are mentioned at any meeting because I'm like, I got this. I know how to do this. And if I don't know how to do this, I will figure it out,
Mhm,
right? But when people are mentioning different tasks and things that need to be done, like they're not challenging you. They're not personally challenging you and thinking that you can't do that.
mhm.
So you don't need to accept tasks or not give away tasks and delegate because you think you're trying to prove something to someone.
Right. Right.
I think it's actually assumed that you do know how to do that thing, but what's more important is making sure your plate is well balanced, with tasks so that you don't burn out over time. So basically for me it was like people know that I can do this thing. I don't need to take on everything in order to prove that I can. I already have the job. So it actually kind of coincides with imposter syndrome then.
I literally, oh, you hit it. I love it. I literally circled imposter syndrome and drew an arrow and said, taking it all in, because that's exactly what I thought. It's like we're trying to prove to who? Who are we proving it? I love it. Yes, you go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That just was two on the money.
No, that was my thought, and that is so funny that you circled that. I didn't even notice.
Yeah, this is imposter syndrome right here. I wrote it down and I circled it. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That because that's exactly what I thought about. And I actually just had a job intervention about this past week because I don't know if I talk about it, but full time I'm a software engineer. I'm a DevOps software engineer for I guess I can talk about the company Disney. So I manage the automation for Disney Plus to get onto people's iPhones and Androids and that stuff. And that's something I've been doing for the past 4 or 5 years. The way I got into that job though was not the traditional route. I didn't go to school for that. I just worked and created stuff at home and got the opportunity. So since I've been in that position, I always had imposter syndrome the entire time for past 5 years. And even in the current position I'm in now, I always just have this fear that people are going to say, "See, look, expose you. You're not good enough." And when you talked about now you talked about something different and I'm mixing the conversations up, but when you talked about anger and you talked about the different backgrounds and how the impact might be different, that's something that comes into play with me when I'm in my position and I think about DEI and how I'm instantly, because I'm
Hmm.
a black man, I think I will automatically, if something fails, even if it's just one thing, going to be looked at as a DEI hire. And this is not something, and so for
Dang.
me, you said same.
I said, no, I said dang.
Oh, oh, that's it. I was like,
If
I knew
for
it. My
anyone for anyone listening, I am not a black man.
oh yeah, that's gonna be clipped. That's so funny. Yeah, yeah. But for me, it's something where instead of me backing down, I get that stubbornness that you get, where it's like, all right, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you. I'll show you why I'm in the position I'm in. And I think that just breeds burnout. So they had to intervene this week and they were like, dude, you're working to 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. trying to fix issues. What do we need to do? And I said, well, this is where now me having the knowledge that we have now, I'm like, just give me somebody, give me another person. That will help me out. Give me another person. So they're working to do what they can with it. But when we talk about the imposter syndrome and delegation, because I do have somebody, but they're stuck on something right now, I can't really delegate that to them. I just think all of that is related. And I wanted to talk real quick. I wanted to also give some words of advice, help, whatever it might be for delegation. And this is what I learned. Because when you struggle with delegation, people don't understand you struggle in so many areas of your life. Um, you struggle in relationships because romantic relationships, especially if you have expectations of your significant other and you aren't able to express it or get those needs met, you have it with your children. If you're trying to tell your children what to do, you have it at work and business, all of these different areas of life. And I boiled it down to three things for myself. The things that I will be asking for would either be unfair, they will be undefined, or they will be unrealistic. And I talk a little bit about all of these deeper, but we also, this is another thing, we have this issue with ourselves. We also have these issues with ourselves, which I think leads us to the burnout. We are unfair to ourselves. We have this undefined expectation for ourselves when we talk about perfectionism. What does it ever look like to be perfect? And we have this unrealistic expectation for ourselves that can never be attained. Um, I could go deeper on that, but I think me just saying it makes sense. But what are your thoughts on that, on those three?
I wrote that down and I think that's incredible and makes so much sense. And the three that you picked out are like perfectly define the struggle. So that
Yeah.
is awesome. I love that. I'm probably going to use that. I'll attribute it to you.
No, I love it.
Um, I did want to circle back because I wrote this down when you were talking about how
Mhm.
you asked for someone for help when people at your work sat down with you and said, "Okay, you're working too much. What
Yeah.
can we do?" Which, first of all, that sounds very supportive, so that's good. But you actually took them up on the offer and expressed an idea or a solution, and that's huge. So kudos
Thank
to
you.
you on that.
Thank you. I want to play a sound effect, but I'm not streaming, but I'll still play one. That's the sound effect I'll play. Thank you. Yeah, and that's something that I mentioned with OCPD. There is no cure. We just have to really be more, we have to be really, really intentional and apply different strategies that help us. And that's where I was. And I'll be honest, I asked for help a while back. I did explain the whole way forward, but they didn't understand the vision. And then things wound up changing, which made the situation happen. But I told them, I said, look, I need three people for this. This is the process. And this, oh, we're going to go into this. Our strengths. Efficiency is your strength to me with OCPD, efficiency. And I come from a family of folks who, to have OCPD, you have to have four of the symptoms. And I come from a whole family that is multiple generations deep now of folks who deal with OCPD. And I'm the first one who ever found out about it. And I help people with logical solutions. And one of the things that I recommended was if you're trying to find a career, find something that deals with making stuff efficient because you will feel fulfilled to me if you can improve a process or help somebody out. And that's why I think with your YouTube channel is so great because you are helping people. You are giving information and sharing your story. And to me, that's helping people optimize their lives and make their lives more efficient. So, have you ever considered the efficiency element as your strength with your OCPD?
Yeah, that is a great question. First of all, I also relate to what you were saying about the generations in your family, but then how also you're sort of the first, person to actually find out what this thing is.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. And once you find out, you're taking it to the internet to create awareness and then help people who also have who experience similar things. So, okay, so as far as efficiency, I guess I never really thought of it as efficiency is my strength, but I can really see how it is. And the reason I say that is because, I mean, before we even started recording this call,
Mhm.
you and I were talking about why doesn't Zoom have this certain option or
Yeah.
feature in this certain other place? Because it doesn't really make sense how it does. I cannot shut that part of my brain off of like, this could be better, this could
Yeah.
be more efficient, this could be maybe faster. Yeah, I can never seem to shut that part of my brain off.
And that's what, but that I love it. And I want to tell people this. When we found out we have OCPD, I think it might be easy to look at every single trait as this is a curse or this is an issue. And I don't think we need to look at it like that because what Molly just mentioned about having your the always optimizing stuff in your head basically and finding better ways to do things. I think that that is an underrated ability, and you just have to find the best place for yourself with that ability. And I would tell you that's why I think I've been able to survive so long in my career, even though I wasn't the best trained, was because it is literally optimization, it's automation. How can we make things automate? How can we make things faster? How can we keep things running? And before this, I recommend the career instructional design for folks who have OCPD. That was the first career that I ever had, and I understand why it was so easy. It felt so easy. It didn't feel like I was working, and that was the perfect thing. But do you know what instructional design is before I get into it? Are you aware of it?
Yeah, is that creating like online courses kind of that people walk through?
Yes,
Or it
and
doesn't have
that's
to be online?
that. Yep. So online is one component to it. So, but that's the same exact. It's the same exact thing, and it's essentially just making training material. So when I was working at Rocket Mortgage in Michigan, there used to be Quicken Loans. I came in as a 19-year-old instructional designer from college. Had no idea. I thought I was doing graphic design because I loved that. And they're like, no, we need you to we're going to give you a blank, well, not a blank document. It was called a shell. And it would just be a Word file with text. And it was what the trainer wanted to illustrate to the trainees. We would take that shell and transform it into a different form of media. It would either be an announcement, it could be, as you mentioned, an online thing. So we would create online quizzes. It could be a breakout, which would just be a couple page document, or it could be an entire study guide. And it was our jobs to take that content, make sure it flowed correctly. And this is the part that I think people would love most. When you're doing this, you have the job of proofreading other folks. So I used to do my adjustments and then I would send it to the person who had a master's degree in instructional design, and she would come back with like 250 corrections. And that part sucked having OCPD. I did not want to be critiqued because I tried my best and my best was not good enough. But you get to do that to other folks too. So when it's your turn, it felt so rewarding when you go and find every time you find it was therapeutic in a way. So a lot of folks they have not even heard of instructional design. I know I hadn't, but I recommend it because we tend to have issues with traditional careers where we just don't know where we fit. We're too critical. Our anger doesn't really lead us to want to be around people all the time because we just don't know and we're in our heads not just judging, but I don't even want to say judging folks. We're optimizing folks. We're optimizing folks in our heads. And I think with ourselves, we're so critical that we don't need to be in a high performing role where it's always a stressful situation. So I think sales, even though that was fun, having to always be stressed out with hitting numbers while also having your natural stress, I don't think works. But what do you, yeah, let's talk about you in career. What do you think? What's your thoughts?
Whenever you said proofreading, I was like, yes, this reminds me that a strength of mine is proofreading slash other types of accuracy. I just sort of have that this like eye and pull for detail. And so I kind of am the proofer in a lot of my jobs more informally than formally, but people will know that they can run things by me. I
Mhm.
take pride in that. And I don't think so that's definitely a strength for me, which I'm glad about. When you talked about being in a higher stress job, that's what I have experienced in my past couple of jobs. I'm in a newish job now, but in
Mhm.
my past couple of jobs, I worked in communications and marketing, and one was at a school district during COVID. Just one example is a very like stressful time at all times, and so that did not go well for me overall in general, although of course there were parts that I loved as well. And then the job I had after that was sort of a false sense of stress. Everyone else was just stressed all the time, but we like to say we were not saving lives. But that was the wrong vibe for me. So I like how you were saying maybe you should consider a role that's slightly less stressful and then incorporate your skills that you do well. What a
That
concept.
I know, and I'll tell you this: coaching is something that I never thought about ever doing. Right? I never wanted to go into the mental health field, even though I grew up in it because my mother and grandmother they own, and my uncles and my cousins they own adult foster care homes. So they literally take care of people who have schizophrenia or different mental illnesses, and I've been around them my entire life. I It took me so long to even piece that together that I've always been around these things, but it was my therapist who actually recommended me to go into it because I told her about the conversations I had with family when I was really acting as just that middle ground because they could not communicate to each other. And I was the middle person where I said, let me help you communicate and let me help you see their point of view. Let me help you see their point of view. And she said, you should go into mental health. She recommended going as a psychologist, which she does. And I told her I'm not going back to school. I'm like, I already have a great career and I have a child. I don't have the patience. And that's when she recommended coaching. So what you're saying is interesting because I've had clients who have actually had therapists for 15 years who have said that some of the stuff that I've said clicks more with them than stuff, not everything that a therapist has said, obviously, but some of the things are just like, well, why was that just not said? Like that makes a lot of sense. And that's where I always try to approach anything I do with that. What makes the most sense? And leaning on your strengths for a career, as Molly mentioned, proofreading, that's a form of efficiency. You're trying to fix things. And you can have a whole career with doing stuff like this. You can build businesses where you just analyze companies and analyze the documents before they, because I get upset when I see companies send out stuff that has spelling errors. To me, that it shouldn't exist. And then I had to get hard on myself a couple weeks ago because I realized that on my website and on my YouTube banner for the past few years, I've had a spelling error.
No.
And it's still up. I haven't even changed it because I'm trying to change. This is my exposure therapy. This is another part of it. And I'll go into this so we can transition. When we talked about the strengths and efficiency being your strength, I think it gets unhealthy when you cannot control your reaction to identifying what the issue is. For instance, you finding errors or finding ways to make things better in your head at all points of time, at any point in time, to me is healthy. That's natural. That's how your brain's gonna operate. Can't really do anything to change it. That's what it is. Thank goodness that that's how it works, so you can see those opportunities. But if you're the type of person that I used to be, where anytime I see an error, I have to say something to call somebody out about it, that's where for me it gets unhealthy. It seems
Yep,
like you
yep.
have something to say about that.
No, yeah, I definitely have experienced that as well. And I have to sort of do that balancing act of I want to be helpful, right? And I do see things that could probably help and make something better.
Mhm.
But I also don't want to come off as a know-it-all.
Yes, 100%. Yes. You you just that oh man. I literally have to because my wife, she it's funny, I never knew she had OCPD and I never knew I had OCPD, but she was harder on me than I would be myself. And I'm like, how are you harder on me? But one of the things that she told me was that she said sometimes you just start giving people advice and they didn't ask for the advice. So I started doing a thing where now I ask. I say, well, look, do you want to hear what I do you need any help with this? Do you want to hear what I have to say? Because if not, I keep it. But if you do, just brace yourself. It might not be what you want to hear. And I think that has helped a lot. So what you said, just that know-it-all, that's definitely something we always have to face. And what was it that you said right before being a know-it-all that triggered it? Oh,
Was it the balancing act of
that's what it is, the balancing act. I would recommend if you're the type of person that really has a hard time with this, you have to expose yourself to it more. And it's not an overnight thing that gets resolved, but this is what I recommend. Force yourself to deal with mistakes, even if it makes you look a certain way. A few things I'll give you an example of. And then there's another part of this, but the other part is going to be just remind me if I forget, I'm going to say big companies. That's all, just big companies. But force yourself to try to deal with mistakes or being embarrassed in a way because you have to build your skin up for it. When I shaved my head bald because I had hair and I decided to shave it because it was easier, it was more efficient for me to have a bald head. I was horrible. I'm still suck kind of, but I was really bad. And I posted a picture of my torn up head when I was shaving in the middle of me shaving it to the OCPD support group because it's like, hey, this is forced exposure. And it allowed me to laugh. And me doing that one time took off all pressure of me not having my haircut going forward, in the right way. Another thing was that, as I just mentioned with the website, me having that error up, normally I wouldn't leave it up, but I think that me leaving it up right now means more because I know it exists and I know I can fix it, but I need people to understand that I'm not trying to be perfect. It's okay if I'm not perfect. And I like it to actually be a game where if somebody finds it, I dare somebody to find it and point it out to me. And I think that'd be a lot of fun. So the other component of this is finding out what finding real world examples of other bigger companies messing up. And this goes back to what we talked about with the unfair, undefined, unrealistic. That unrealistic and unfair part is huge for me because I've always held myself to this standard compared to the best of the best. And we tend to compare ourselves to the best. Anything we do, we want to be the best of the best. Something as simple as game development, me making video games. I wanted my game to be bug free. I said no bugs. If it's a bug, I'm a fraud. And then I started playing Spider-Man 2, Marvel Spider-Man 2, which it has a multi-million dollar budget, over 100 developers, years to bake in the oven. And I literally laugh now because I find bugs in the game, like somebody, a human just blending in with the wall. And I just take pictures. And I literally I go around and I take pictures of imperfection in the world. Another thing, cricket pictures. I get those a lot. There was a tile job in Florida. I can remember. This is the thing. We remember stuff. We remember where we saw the imperfection. But in Florida at Disney Springs, there's a restaurant called Hollywood, Planet Hollywood. And if you go in the men's restroom, you go in the stall, the men's stall, look at the tile on the floor. Look at the tile on the floor, and you're going to find crooked tiles. So this is something that I've gotten myself used to finding it in the real world, and now I don't have this unrealistic expectation for myself because I'm just we're one person. We can only control what we can do. So what are your thoughts on that before I start pivoting to another combo?
Oh my gosh, I have a lot of thoughts. One is I love that you're doing that, but it's important that you have the mindset that you're having because I feel like years ago I could have done the exact same thing as you, right? Like basically record mistakes, but in a way that's like obviously they need help, they need better people, like more in a punitive way.
Mhm.
But you're doing it in a way that's more like it is okay. You can give yourself grace. This mistake happened. It doesn't seem like anything bad happened. Also, you can roll out an app update or
Yes.
something. If you think of your life like that, things can be iterated on
Ooh.
if you do find there being a mistake, but sometimes it's just important to get it out there. I think about that when I think about some of the creative projects that I have,
Mhm.
particularly around writing, and you just want it to be perfect, of course, but at some point it's worth releasing into the world. Yeah.
Ooh.
Um, and you can always go back to it.
Yes.
So, another thing I wrote down when we're talking about mistake making, which is basically what you were doing when you were letting some of those bugs sit in your game, is I recently have come up with this phrase, which is mistakes aren't milestones.
I
So,
like that.
like, you don't have to go back. You don't need to keep track of the mistakes that you made. It's not a big deal. It's gonna happen over and over again.
Right.
It's not a milestone. So that helped me a lot too.
I like that. My mistakes aren't milestones. Dash Molly from You Seem Normal. I'm writing this down. Um,
I'm
so
glad this is recorded because otherwise I've been missing some of the stuff I want to write down that you've said.
yeah, no, this is great, and we're gonna have like I said, this is our first time ever meeting. So we're just flying right now. We're just flowing, and in the future, I think we can make even better better videos where we're more not even better. I don't like that term. We'll make more specific videos where we
Mhm.
can dive into a deep topic or even answer questions if you guys have them. And something that you said was unreleased projects. It's a whole topic making something to the point where you get you get so lost in the details. This is part of the description. You get so deep into the details, you miss the goal. You miss the overall big time goal. And I have a graveyard of unreleased projects that were just 20% away from being finished. So, oh man, I would love to talk about that. But let's come back to that. Maybe that could be a future topic we can go into. I wanted to pivot it real quick to relationships because you mentioned earlier when I said that my wife has OCPD, ADD, and I have and she has another one, which you reminded me of when you were talking. That's why I asked about your other diagnosis, but she has social anxiety. So for her, it is, man, I wish I remembered exactly what you said earlier that really triggered it, but it was something to the extent of making other people not look at you in a certain way or making yourself look incompetent. And I think a lot of her disorder is based off how other people are perceiving her as well. So I think all of the
Mhm.
OCPD kind of works with a lot of different disorders in multiple ways. It's such a complex disorder. It touches so many things. But yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about relationships with OCPD, ADHD. OCD, IED. And I can't remember, is that your fiance or go
My
you go
boyfriend. Yeah, my partner.
boyfriend, your
Yeah.
partner? I saw a video and now I can't remember exactly what it was, but he also deals with a few things as well, right? Go ahead.
Yes, and I don't know that there's a, official diagnosis or anything like that, but there are definitely times when there's struggles with mental health, like, like any human. So,
Yeah. Okay.
yes.
So with that being the case, I think it would be really beneficial if we talk relationships because I think out of all of the and this is again, this is not based off data what I'm saying right now, so don't take me for my word here. But I think that is probably where we struggle most with OCPD. Outside of all of our personal struggles, we have a big struggle with romantic relationships, especially because of our tendencies. And I saw someone make a post yesterday that I talked about, but they made the post that they don't feel like they fit in anywhere and they don't think they'll be able to essentially they won't be able to find a romantic relationship because of their tendencies. And I hear that a lot where people are dealing with this. So I would like to hear from your experience, what has that been like knowing that you have OCPD and you are the person that has it and you have to make a lot of adjustments to make sure you are not making life a living hell. I'll keep it like that for your significant other.
Yeah, I mean, I would first say you are worthy of being in a relationship, whatever type of relationship you wish to be in. And there is hope. I totally get what people are might be fearing, which is, am I too much? Is anyone going to be able to handle this with me? Uh, the other person in my relationship might not get it. Maybe they think I'm, dramatic or something like that, but I know that there's hope. I found someone who I think it's really interesting for you, Shannon, because you said your wife lives with OCPD. So you probably have similar personalities or similar traits.
Hmm.
Do you say no?
No, we'll talk about it because I don't want to interrupt you, but yeah, we definitely talk about that.
Yeah, cool. But besides that, my boyfriend Justin is like a very, very chill person, which is totally not what I am. So that has been, I think, helpful for me because he can help in certain stressful situations, just kind of bring me down. He's also very logical in that way when a lot of times I'm living in my like emotion brain, so he can help kind of balance that out. But then we actually today is our 1 year anniversary of living together.
Okay.
And so there have also been just some interesting quirks and things about living together for the first year, and particularly in like in the frugality sense.
Hmm.
So trying to save money or having little ways of having things like, for example, the temperature or the having the lights on or not.
No way. Temp, yes. Yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just constantly thinking of, why is the air on right now when it doesn't have to be, or why is it up this high? Like I'm just so concerned about that when, by the end of the month and the bill comes for our energy, it's maybe like a $5 difference.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's just something I think about multiple times per day.
This is so I'm going to give you some closure here or some peace, some additional peace. The temperature, I talk to my wife about it every day. Every day. Um, and I always want to talk and make sure people don't think I'm down on my wife. She's the best. I love her. But we just are different in certain ways, but so similar in certain ways. And this thing thought I was telling it to zoom in, but I wasn't, but whatever. Zoom out. The way we are different are things such as temperature. She likes it really cold, so she typically wants it on 73, 70 degrees. And I like it really hot. So guess what I have right next to me? I have a space heater. Oh, and you want to see frugality? Look at that. Look at that space heater. Look how that's frugal. That's how it is. It's it's always we will use something until it can't be used anymore. But that's why I always tie back to efficiency. It's just optimized. It's like, well, why spend the money right now? Is still working. We can make it work. And yeah, you mentioned something when you say the temperature of the lights. I keep going back to efficiency, even if it's just a 5% or 5 cent difference or something small, it still is making it more optimized. And you're probably thinking, yeah, it's only $5, but we just spend $5 on food, and that $5 could be used for something like that, where it adds up. So it makes sense. And when you said logical, I love that because it's kind of flipped with, well, no, it's not flipped. Yeah. I'm the logical one in my marriage, and my wife is the more emotional one. And with that being the case, and me having OCPD, I think I have a much more severe version of OCPD because me as a young man, I've had so much pressure, especially I'm from Detroit, grew up in a single parent home, and had a lot of pressure put on me young to take everything serious. So I couldn't even get C's in little school. Like a C, I used to be told if they give you a C for just coming to class, which is false. That's not true. I don't know why people told me that, but they said if you get a C, the teacher gives you a C just for going to class. That's not true. But I got told that as a kid. So it was just that was the expectation. I think you shared your relationship with your boyfriend. You said he's the chill one and he's more lax. He helps you lax when you might get in your ways. And I think that that is something that is really big for people who have OCPD to to focus on, and that is compatibility. So I think it's
Hmm.
hard if you have two headstrong people with OCPD. I think that relationship is going to be very hard and it's going to be very scrutinizing. I think there are going to be, and it's not saying it can't work, but I'm just setting expectations for what you might deal with. There will be a lot of scrutiny to the point where you don't feel appreciation. And I think any relationship, if you don't have the appreciation part component of it, then it sucks. If you are in a relationship or married to somebody and you have ADHD or OCPD and they have OCPD and you want to look at where you could start, I would recommend focusing on communication. Like first and foremost, how are you communicating when you're angry? Are you communicating? And this goes back to the delegation and how I said everything is tied together. Are you communicating in a way that is fair, defined, and realistic with your needs? So the document, I sent the document over to you. I call it an expectation management document. And I've actually used this with couples with success, which is crazy. Who would have thought a document could help people with communication issues? But what I actually have had them do is there is an expectation manager, and I run my life as if it is a business and my relationship the same way. So I run it like a software engineering company because that's what I love to do, and it makes sense and it's efficient. So you have your MVPs, which are your must-haves, and these are things that you have to have fulfilled. So this is where you could sit down with your significant other. You both print it out. One of you writes down what your needs are, and the other one writes what their needs are. And these are the non-negotiables. So I need you to love me or whatever it might be. Just treat me nicely, not swear at me, communicate this way, be an active parent, whatever it might be. And then you have those nice to haves, which are anything above and beyond. And I always use the example with this of cleaning the kitchen because that's such a we will folks with OCPD will say something like, "Can you clean the kitchen?" This is just how we communicate because we're thinking that they're seeing what that looks like in our head. We're thinking they're seeing what the clean kitchen looks like, and we're on the same page. And what I noticed is that we're typically unaligned there. There's not that very clear expectation. So when we talk about something being unfair, are you being fair to them when you're asking them something? To make sure that they understand what you're asking them. And then when they don't do it, are you reacting unfairly to them? And then also when they do it, are you giving them the praise that they deserve for getting it done? Or is it just you're hard on them when they're not doing it? The next part, the undefined. So that document, the expectation manager document, helps you define what the needs are. It's very, very cut and dry, must haves, nice to haves. And then the last thing is unrealistic. I'll go unrealistic back to what I told you about the gaming, but I even think that's the same thing people deal with relationships a lot of times. We expect somebody to meet every single one of our needs, and if they are missing just one, and it could be the smallest one, then we just say this is not working. You're not the one. So I said a lot, and I want to just let you chime in there if you have anything you want to add.
I'm looking at the expectation manager right now, and it's wonderful. We, my partner and I, before we moved in together, we had like a Google Doc where we would go through and we wrote down like our like expectations and how we would choose to handle things like cleaning and other things.
Hmm.
So I
Of
think
course.
you and I are on the very
Molly,
similar
sorry.
page.
I have a question for you. Whose idea was that? Got it. I knew it. I knew it just had to be. I just wanted the clarification
Yep.
because, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was absolutely my idea. And I even joked, and I actually might be serious about having a like a 1 year like kind of review of
Yeah.
how things are going. Yeah. It doesn't have to be so formal as what you and I are talking about, but it could be. It's not a big deal.
It's not.
Just
Yeah.
do it. Yeah. Yeah, you can
And
have that
that
conversation.
and what you said, we don't do one yearly, but we do check-ins. And I don't think it's as weird as people would make it seem. But this is where I get back to reframing how we look at our lives, as
Mhm.
uncomfortable as it might be. You think about a billion-dollar company that has all of this, all of these people, all of these different operations that need to get done. And you think about how much work has to go into planning, doing refinement, all of that stuff. So why not give your relationship the same amount of energy? I think you'll get better dividends from giving it to your relationship. So I think that's an amazing idea to have those check-ins. And something that I'm gonna get back to the relationship in a second, but something that I do on I stream this every single Sunday. So this is the one I just wrapped up before we got on the call. But every single Sunday at 1:15 p.m. Eastern time, I go and plan out everything I need to do for the week. So this is not job stuff, believe it or not. This is everything outside of my job. And what I do is I have broken my life up, the progress in my life, into what I call value lanes or buckets.
Mhm.
And in my tier one relationship bucket or value lane, that's my wife and my son. So anything I do contributes to spending time with them, for me, I can still look at it as progress. But I think a lot of times we have just looked at businesses, money, all of that as progress. And anything that takes away from that time, we look at as a hindrance or roadblock. And that is what I have a bunch of different examples of value lanes that I have, but I have spiritual, I have mental health, I have one for my business. And I think just the most important one that I have are the relationships because I have them tier one, that is wife, son. Tier two, that's parents and siblings. Tier three, that is where you get your cousins, aunts, grandmas, and all of them. And then tier four are friendships and business relationships. And as long as you know that you make time for that tier one every single week, then you know that you're still giving that energy and time. And I said all that. I went a long way from where I was going with it, but I do these reviews on myself every single week. So the review that you talked about, I have a retro and I spend 15 minutes and I write down everything that went well, everything that did not go, things that didn't go well, and then I give myself action steps going forward, things I need to improve on. And I do this live. I actually do this in front of it. It's really weird because I'm wide open. I'm telling folks, yeah, I didn't do a good job planning with this. I didn't do a good job breaking this out. I could have spent more time with my son. I spent too much time with my son. Like I went overboard. So yeah, I said that. And I wanted to say one more thing about the compatibility element. A lot of what I said originally was OCPD plus OCPD. And I think once you understand what your compatibility needs to be for your relationship to work, you will, if you have severe OCPD or you're really dominant, you're going to realize you need somebody a lot more chill. And that's what works. So I'm guessing you were probably wondering how we make it work with us both having it. My wife is chill. So she, with the social anxiety, she is quiet. She's reserved. She doesn't like being around people. I have a video all about her that'll be coming out soon. But I'm the opposite. So I'm really and she's more passive with decision making. So she's very indecisive. So she gets that. Whereas me, I'm indecisive, but my ADHD makes me really active. And I think that is the balance. My ADHD and her having the ADD, those are opposite. So it really it makes an interesting formula for our OCPD traits. So I'm the one that I'm always coming up with new ideas and instantly just doing it. I'm like, oh no, 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 I got an idea. I'm starting it, which was an issue and I had to plan it out. Another thing is being being the person to correct people. So my wife would let people do her dirty is not what I want to say. Do her wrong is not. I think that's an exaggerating, but she would let people say and do things that would upset her, but she wouldn't want to stir the pot and correct it. Whereas I'm the opposite. I'm proactive. If I think something is going to lead to issues in the future, I will come right out and say, with love and respect, this is an issue. Here's how we can move forward with it. So it works really interesting. But I think the funniest thing when you said about the traits we might have together, my wife is really she gives me her OCPD traits as far as she will always, I don't want to say critique. No, that's the word. She tries to optimize me a lot, and she's gotten better. But she's always, even with my wall, you see this wall? I built this wall. But when she came in after I did it, she was like, "What's up with all the bumps on it?" And I'm like, "I just finished it. I painted it and everything. Now you tell me." And but it's just when you are together and you work on that communication, and I think getting the diagnosis and understanding it gives you so much peace and gives you such a leg up in your relationship because now you know yourself, you know your tendencies. So if he tells you you're overreacting about this specific thing, Molly, you're like, you have to take this and say, am I? Is this one of my traits? Or but if you didn't know, you might say, no, no way, I'm overreacting. You're just not seeing it from my point of view. And that is why I really think compatibility, being with the right person who balances you, I think really helps out a lot.
Yes, I that is a wonderful word that I 100% agree with. That is really what you're looking for is compatibility, not every little, picky thing that you need, as you were saying, because some things are nice to have versus
Mhm.
some things are must have. So that's different. For anyone who is worried about being in a relationship because you live with OCPD and you might have tendencies that you're like self-conscious about and you think other people don't want, I
Mhm.
guess,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term, other every single person in the universe has stuff too. So like there's probably someone else out there thinking the same thing about their own stuff.
Yes.
You will
Yes.
find the
Yes.
compatible people.
I love that. And I think that piggybacks onto one more point I want to make, and then I want to open it up to you if you have any questions or any topics to address. The the transparency behind your disorder and your diagnosis, I think is huge. I know a lot of times we get these disorders and we think, oh, is something wrong with me now? And people are going to look at me like I'm crazy. But I would tell you this, I think it's how you wear it. I do. I think there are certain times where people might have disorders and people look at them because of how they might be reacting and say, yeah, that is just because of the disorder. But if you are wearing it in the right way, which is that's such a it's such a relative term, but if you are using it in the right way and you tell people about your disorder, I think you actually give people confidence to share their struggles because as you mentioned, everybody has their thing. And you will be surprised how many folks that I have talked to openly, because I go anywhere, I don't care. I'm like ADHD, OCPD, and I know how to use them both. What's up? That's my
Mhm.
strengths. I'll put it on a resume and say, I have OCPD, which means that I'm very good at paying attention to small details. And I have ADHD, which means if we have a problem that nobody can solve, I'm going to be able to hyper focus and try to figure out something. So that is a strength. But a lot of times we don't focus on the strength. And I know it's hard, it takes time. But I've been in a room with so many folks where I talk about my disorder or my OCPD and the traits of it because I care less about the labels, but the traits of it. And so many folks tell me they have been dealing with the same exact thing. And these are people you would never expect. Lawyers. I've talked to lawyers, business owners, family members. And you start just talking about different ways about yourself or different things. And they say, I think I might need to get checked out too. I think I might deal with that. So you really could be saving a life. You could be saving a relationship. Somebody who might deal with this and not know might be struggling in their relationship. You could be saving generations of trauma because what we don't talk about a lot, because we talk about anger, is the relationship that OCPD has as a parent and ADHD. But OCPD as a parent is tough, specifically
Mhm.
because you have your however old you are. So for me, 29-year-old brain, and I'm trying to put it on a 4-year old and expect them to understand everything that I understand. So that includes safety, the importance of listening, the importance of me working in silence and giving me space to concentrate. Like all of these things that you have learned through life, you put it on the child, and then you start being strict on the child. And that's why I think I developed mine was I grew up in a strict home. So you have to find the balance of it all. But the more that you communicate about this, I think you can really save people.
Well, I agree with you. I was nodding, I was nodding along in emphasis with
Oh,
a
okay.
lot of what you were saying. Yes.
An emphasis. I like that.
Something that I haven't been able to debrief a lot with anyone because I don't honestly know anyone in real life that lives with OCPD. But I was listening to a presentation and it was by a doctor,
Mhm.
like a doctor of psychology, I think. And she was sort of giving a mental illness overview. And so she talked a little bit about each personality disorder or some of them. And OCPD was one of them. And I will say the beginning of like most of her presentation seemed accurate to me.
Mhm.
Like I didn't really have, there was a little bit of like stigmatizing language I felt like at a couple points, but mostly it was, I felt that the most things were accurate and didn't stand out a ton to me. But she got to a slide and it was on OCPD and I was like, okay, here we go. Like, how is she gonna do?
Mhm.
And she didn't do super well. The only thing she said was, have you all ever seen a hoarder? That's who these like people are. And I was like, what? And she had like all of these bullet points on the slide that were accurate
Mhm.
about like inflexibility and other things like that. But that was all she said. And then she went to the next slide. And I was like,
Crazy.
I was sort of in, yeah, I was sort of in like a professional capacity. So in my mind, I was like, basically, do I say something or not? Which is something
Uh-huh.
we talked about earlier. Do I correct this person who like has her doctorate or not? I didn't. But I was like, have you ever experienced someone being so wrong about OCPD and or like any stigma that you've experienced? Another thing I have experienced is people commenting on some of my videos like, "Oh, people with OCPD, they're the worst to work with. You just can't do it." So, those are kind of the two things I was going to ask you about.
Okay, so let me do this. Can I pause the video? Can I get something real quick? Give me 1 second. 1 second. It's so ironic. It's so ironic that we are having this first part of the conversation. So I'm going to talk about this and then we'll get into the questions you asked. But I guess have you seen Horton? Have you dealt with Horton as someone with OCPD, first of all?
No.
Okay, let me show you this. When we talk about Horton and OCPD, I'm going to show you what it in real
Okay.
life looks like because I think
Yeah.
people hear Horton and OCPD and think of the show Hoarders, but that's not what it is.
Yes.
This is an example, and this is just 5 bottles. I have 2 more bottles in here and 2 more upstairs of lotion. And I'm not,
Uh-huh.
it's not for anything where I have to lotion my entire body up every single day.
Yeah.
And the reason why I have so many bottles, even though most of these can be tossed, is because I always just think there is 5% more that I can use, which goes back to what?
Yeah.
Efficiency.
Yeah. I will
And
cut open my like makeup,
this
like
isn't,
SPF makeup to get the rest of it.
and
So,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and it is definitely making the most of things, but just the way she said it,
Was
back to
it?
her, I did not find that the way that she portrayed that was very accurate, but I absolutely also have troubles throwing things away when they're still somewhat useful. So like if there's 5% of the product left, I'm gonna keep it
Hmm?
until I can do something with it. And like keeping sentimental papers and
Mm-mm.
things is something that I keep. but my lifestyle does not look like, that the hoarding show. And not to stigmatize people who have to live with a hoarding disorder, but it is different.
Yes, and that's why I wanted to show because we only hear hoarders and think of the show, but we are organized hoarders or efficient hoarders is what I like to call it. So I showed you the lotion, and I do the same thing with wires. So I have an
Mm.
entire two bins filled to the brim with wires and cords. Not because in my head I'm just being junky or messy. I just think it's efficient to have them because we always wind up using cords. So anytime I get a cable, instead of throwing the cable away, I keep the cable. And this is where it becomes dangerous. And I even with the sentimentals, I still have my stuff from when I was a third grader. My mom just put it in one of these binders when I was a small kid. She put it in binders, so I still have all of my drawings when I was a kid. I have my college essays that I like drawings because it means something to us. We worked really hard. We were really proud of ourselves, and maybe it just makes us feel that pride. So it makes sense to keep the stuff. I think it's just when it comes down to the organization and then finding a way to get rid of the stuff eventually. But this is where it becomes an issue and why I still have this. I didn't even notice that I had all of these. It's just before it gets to the end, I buy new ones. But we always wind up being, oh, this is gonna sound so bad, but it's so true. We a lot of times wind up being right when it comes down to using something that we put away. We are the people that if it comes down to somebody needing extra batteries and they don't have enough batteries, we will, oh, we've got some somewhere and we can show you where it is when it comes. So if you are in a zombie apocalypse and you want to know how to survive, you need to be around somebody or coordinate with somebody who has OCPD because we are going to be efficient about keeping stuff, even finances. I think that's what frugality is just hoarding the money. That's just what, but it's efficient hoarding of money. It's not hoarding money just so we can be billionaires. It's no, I just don't want to be broke in the future or be in a bad situation. So it's more efficient for me to do this with my money. So that's that, because that's a whole tangent. I just thought it was funny because I brought these bottles down to talk about them at some point.
That is so funny that you had all those. And then I asked the question that I did, and you said, wait, let me show you this.
I literally brought them down and set them in my bathroom. I told my wife, I said, look at this. This is ridiculous. I have five deodorants that I can't get any more use. But and I guess that's one more thing. We are, with us being efficient, we are prepared. We are proactive.
Hmm.
So I think if we were reactive and we waited until we ran out, then we wouldn't keep this stuff. But because we always re-up or make sure that we're good beforehand, we never wind up seeing something all the way through until it's gone, and thus it's still useful and we still keep it. So that's where I have. So I have a bunch of cardboard boxes out back. But anytime I want to do a home improvement project, I never have to stress. I just pull it out and
Yep.
get to painting. So yeah, so to answer your question about incorrect information or even harmful information, I'll say that yes, I have, and one of the biggest things is actually ADHD related. One of the biggest ones because I've seen for some reason people say ADHD is not real, and I think that's insane. Um, and I think we care. I think they care too much about the term ADHD to say it's not real. Da, da, da. It's real, and it's real. I can tell you it's real because every single side effect that was listed for this disorder, I had every single side effect. To me, a diagnosis is just the culmination of a certain amount of side effects, and that's what makes the disorder. So to say a disorder is not real, to me, is to say that the side effects are not real, which makes no sense because I'm dealing with the side effects. So for me, I have this thing. My wife knows. I tell her I don't take people serious, and I look at people as characters. As far as people have characteristics and they work in patterns. And if you are able to identify patterns of people, you can typically identify what they're going to do, what they're going to say, and how much weight you should put or credence you should put into something they say. Another one that I see is what you said about OCPD folks and being bad partners or bad, did you say bad coworkers? But I see it with
Hmm.
bad partners. Where they say
Hmm.
people with OCPD are horrible partners, they're borderline abusive, they're narcissists, all of these different things. And that is where I think it is everybody's an individual. So that might be that specific person's interaction that they had with somebody who has OCPD, but they could also have been dealing with another disorder. So to speak, so let's say the IED that you deal with, right? Me as a man, if I have the IED and I have OCPD, but the IED is undiagnosed, the OCPD is something that I don't really know about the impact of anger and how it correlates with the IED, and I get really frustrated because I'm highly stressed. I'm about to lose my house or whatever the case might be. And somebody says something to me and I overreact in that moment, then their perception is they know about the OCPD. That is the disorder they know about. So anybody who has OCPD is a dangerous, violent, or aggressive person. So that's their experience. And I guess for me, I deal with a lot of stereotypes as a black man. I mean, we get that's life has been
Mm-hmm.
stereotypes for me. So for me, I take it a lot less serious, and it's weird, but and I'm not. I want to say this the right way, and I hope people take this the right way and don't take this the wrong way. I don't have a certification in anything related to mental health, but I live this life. So when I talk about OCPD, and even if I talk a little bit about ADHD, I only talk about what I experience myself and any client that I've dealt with or anybody I've talked with, what they have shared with me. And it typically aligns, like it typically makes sense where it is a consistent pattern. And that is what I like to talk about. But you do have therapists and people who specifically go to school for this. I just personally think going to school for something is different than living with it and understanding how the brain ticks. Like myself, we can understand how our brain operates. And if somebody that is a therapist but specializes in OCPD says something that we don't necessarily see logic in, then we could probably communicate about that better than you and the therapist could because they're not going to see it how we see it. So I think perspective is huge, especially when it comes to disorder. So them just bringing hoarding up is interesting because I think hoarding is one of the like the lowest tier disorder things we deal with. Um, I think we deal with it all the time, but I'm saying I think it has the least amount of impact on our life. So I think that was dangerous. To put a word to it, I think is dangerous. I do think you run the risk of people missing out on being able to identify causes for them being diagnosed. Because if I was in the crowd and I have OCPD, but I don't even realize I'm hoarding because I just realized that a few months ago. I would have gotten nothing in that conversation that would make me think I might need to get checked out for OCPD. I would be like, oh, I don't hoard anything. Moving on. I'm good. So I think that's dangerous, especially with the disorder, the type of disorder we have, where, as you said, we see the world as the world is on the other side of the coin, and we're the ones who are normal. We
Right.
see
Yeah.
normal. So I think that's really, really dangerous. I hope I answered that question, right?
Yeah, that makes me feel better. I I agree with you. And her experience, she might actually have not worked with a lot of individuals who maybe have experienced OCPD.
Mhm. That is one element of not working with them, but I still just think unless you have lived the life of somebody with OCPD, not lived with them, so not even living with somebody, I don't think you understand what it's like. It's just like me. The fact that I can
Right.
never be a woman, no matter what I did, I can never be a woman from birth, be a woman. I could never tell a woman about how they see the world because there are other elements that come into play outside of just how the brain functions and operates. It's a bunch of different things that come into play with it. So I could never do it. And that's the same way I think with a personality disorder. You have to be in the personality to really understand how to best help somebody see things in a different way. Because that's what you're really doing when we go to therapy. I mean, you're trying to figure out how you can look at something in a healthier way. To me, that's what it is, and learning about yourself. So I always just say people who deal with this disorder, who can come up with, if it's logic, if it's communicating, even how we're communicating and having these conversations, this is what I think is going to be more useful than just your traditional approaches of therapy. And I'll add one more thing. I always see this with OCPD in particular. I see it a lot where sometimes therapy works, but many times people say, I've gone to therapy for this long and I'm still not seeing results or the results I expect. So painting the picture to get them to understand that it's not fixable, and these are the ways that I have had to cope with it or deal with it. And I know our situations are different, but hopefully this helps a little bit. I think is a better approach than saying, okay, well, based on the book, this is, I just think that's what it is. People are trying stuff and it's just not clicking for folks. It's not.
it helps with imposter syndrome with what we're doing on the internet and being like,
Mhm.
okay, well, maybe someone's already heard this in one way, but if we share our experience and we use, different words and a different approach, it might have a different impact on that person. So that is a not an excuse, but like a reason to keep creating, even if you feel like someone's already done this before or covered this topic before, you might say it in a way that finally reaches that person who's been trying.
One,
So I try to think of that when I am in imposter syndrome about like, people talk about that all the time. It's like, but I haven't.
right, yeah, and that I would love to talk about imposter syndrome, but I want to tack on this. I found out about OCPD from Healthy Gamer GG accidentally because I called a therapist when I told you about the issue I was having, and they told me I might have OCD. They said it sounds like you deal with OCD. And so I was just on the rabbit hole of I have OCD, and I wasn't connecting every single doubt. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll deal with some of this. But then I was listening to Dr. K talk about OCD, and then right after that, I just left the video playing. He started talking about OCPD, and I was like, wait a freaking minute. And I told my wife, I said, this is me. And I got excited. I'm jumping out the bed. I'm like, I finally cracked why I'm like how I am. And yeah, go ahead.
They're like, yeah, I did the investigation. I finally came up with something that makes sense.
Yes, that's what it is. That's exactly what it was. And after that, finding out I had ADHD a few weeks later when I started going to therapy was another crack. And I cried. I don't cry a lot, but I cried in the car, tears of happiness
Hmm.
because I started looking at all the videos and I was binging this content. I was watching everybody I could find because I wanted to see what this was that I was dealing with. So when you talk about everybody, even with imposter syndrome, pushing this content out, I think that is so critical for folks who are just finding out it's not an outdated disorder. We're still dealing with this disorder. There are folks who look different, come from different backgrounds, have
Hmm.
different experiences dealing with this disorder. This disorder, and this is another thing that I try to build my channel upon now is the combination of OCPD and ADHD. So if you have this disorder and you have other disorders, how does that work together? How does that look? So that is where I think your channel, especially how like you have cracked the code to the new YouTube algorithm on how they are doing things and things that get people interested. With the title description, not overdoing the thumbnail and making it more of that best friend approach. I think that is the best way to do YouTube, especially in this environment, because we are all so disconnected from humans. And you think about ChatGPT getting involved and everything now, people are
Hmm.
going to chat GPT over therapists because they just feel more comfortable, I guess. So the approach you're doing with the best friend feel for it is with this, like that's why I already know your channel is probably going to keep taking off. It's just the algorithm finding people who need OCPD help without people really knowing about OCPD at the moment. And that's what I think once people really start finding out about this and hearing about this terminology. And that's the other thing we talk about. Other people have to really find the issue in you first. So that's a whole nother element.
Well, thank you so much for all of your kind words. I appreciate
Yeah,
it so
of
much.
course.
When you were talking about crying tears of joy, like, yes, basically I have a term to now
Yes.
look up and know that I'm not alone, basically experiencing ADHD. That was reminding me exactly of when I received my diagnoses and I really felt that I felt that they were accurate. It felt like
Mhm.
puzzle pieces just clicking. And
Yes.
so yeah, that totally helped me a lot.
Yes. I love that feeling. And then I add one more thing to this part. I think when we have undiagnosed mental health issues or disorders, we are much more prone to having identity issues because we know about what we can make ourselves do, but we don't know why we do the things we do. And if you don't understand why you do the things that you do, I think you just start going all over the place, and then you have that self-doubt in the decisions that you make. So you might make decisions and then say, why did I do this? Like I should have done something different. And then you do that so much that you just start doubting your decisions and you start doubting who you are. And then I think that leads to, especially if you already have depression, that makes it worse. But you imagine that leading to depression because now your relationships are failing. You can't seem to get along with people. Oh, not to mention, I know we talk about how it is with OCPD with other people, but we are just as hard on ourselves. So you are criticizing the heck out of yourself. Every time something fails, it doesn't work. It's like, this is your fault. You need to get better at this. You need to get better at this. But there's only so much getting better that we can do as humans
Hmm.
before we hit the wall. And it's just, okay, this is who I am. I'm stuck with this. And you can make it, you can make adjustments, but if you don't know what adjustments to make, what are you really going to be able to do? And that's why I said identity. You just have identity issues.
Hmm. And if you do receive, a diagnosis, for example, and it's clearer to you, you can find other people who are living full lives with that same diagnosis. And sometimes I think when you maybe don't have that diagnosis, you don't know if there's hope for
Yes.
you. That's another key thing I think too about, getting a diagnosis.
Yes, I agree. So definitely, if you don't know, if you, I recommend everybody go to therapy at least one time, just to make
Mhm.
sure you understand everything about your brain or clear up trauma. But I just think you should learn about your brain, learn how your brain works. It can't hurt you really. It might make you
Mhm.
more emotional, or make you have to be vulnerable. But I don't think these are bad things in that confined space. I think that is where it is safe to do what you have to do and let that out. I do want to thank you because I think this is a great we were only supposed to chat for 25 minutes originally, and we chatted for 2 hours just about. So I think this was a very beneficial conversation. We got a lot of stuff out, and
Mhm.
what we're probably going to do is we can chop this up into mini videos, and then also do shorts from it if you want, and do it like that. But this was great. So thank you, Molly, for coming on, and thank you for having me on your channel since we're doing the bi-directional situation here.
Absolutely, anytime. I can't wait for our next conversations. Obviously, there is a lot to talk about, and we could probably talk for the next 2 days.
Right. That's how it always is. Yeah, that'd be great. And I guess this is an invitation too. If your followers or your subscribers and my subscribers, if you guys want to interact with me, if you have any questions for either one of us or questions that you want us both to tackle, if it's situations, I think this is a great space to do it. We are not therapists, we are not licensed, but we are humans. And we are humans that deal with some of the same struggles that you might deal with who want to help you. So get the help. Don't miss out on the opportunity. Another thing, if you have somebody that might be a loved one who you might think has ADHD, I keep saying that because I just talk ADHD now, but OCPD or any other mental health issue,
Mhm.
I recommend that you don't put it on them and say you have this because I
Mhm.
think, especially with OCPD, it actually would turn them off from it because they're going to look at it as you're trying to put them down. I think instead, just send them videos and say, "Hey, what do you think about this? I just heard about this new phenomenon, or new phenomenon, this situation. But these are highly successful people in the world, or people who are doing different things. They might have different success levels, but there's a disorder they're dealing with, and nobody they don't even know that they have it. But these people don't take breaks. They whatever the case might be, they call them hoarders, but it's not really crazy hoarding. It's just stuff that everybody would keep. It's stuff you would need. These are great zombie survival folks to have. So, what do you think? And I think that would be a great way to introduce the conversation. And I wanted to end it like that
Mhm.
with that point that I made here because I think about we always have to think about where we were when we found out mentally. And if we are already putting pressure on ourselves and judging ourselves, are we really going to want to hear from somebody that you have a mental health disorder? Probably not. But if we go into it with, oh, here's just some information, I think we're more likely to try to piece the dots to connect all the
Mhm.
dots to say, wait a minute now. That sounds like something I might deal with. So that, and then obviously, if you do have the disorder or any disorder, obviously talking with a professional is something we always recommend. And we are the supplement, so we are
Mhm.
here. Molly always has amazing content on You Seem Normal, and she deals specifically with not just OCPD but other topics. What all do you want to talk about your channel about? I
Yeah,
phrased that so horribly. I apologize. It was a bad setup.
no, you're good. Um, yeah, so over on my channel, You Seem Normal, we talk about OCPD, we talk about perfectionism, anger, other ways to just make our lives more efficient,
Mm.
and then also often more joyful. So that's what we're doing over on that side.
I love it. And the joy is a huge component, especially if you might suffer from a disorder such as OCPD and a depression. You always want
Mhm.
to try to see what opportunities you can find for joy, even in those small moments. And just to recap on my channel, so for Molly's folks who are on You Seem Normal, I am Shannon Williams, the OCPD coach. My primary focus is to help you build a healthier relationship with progress. So, not being that crazy person that works like me, who worked on their wedding day and all of that crap, but being able to work hard, celebrate yourself when you work hard, actually celebrate the milestones. I have a whole analogy for being on the mountain without the blindfold to see how far you're going, how far you need to go. I think that's important for us to find satisfaction in life. I think if you just keep working, 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 you won't find it. And I do live streams every Thursday at man, I should have started from say. See, look, optimization already trying to be more efficient. I stream every single Sunday at 1:15 p.m. Eastern time, where I break down my entire week. So this is where if you want to see how I even fit in the time that myself and Molly had, that was one of the tasks that I gave myself to do for the week. So I break down how I do all of that. I give you the behind the curtain look at me critiquing myself and finding ways to improve my process or improve my week going forward. And I try to just give actionable advice. So if you come in and you have some questions, I'm always willing to answer them. I do another stream on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern time where I go over that week, all of the stuff that was done on Sunday that was committed. It's the midweek check-in. So we just check in, see how we're doing, what happened that needs to that now impacts everything. Things get bumped out, things came in. And then I do another stream on Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time where I just work. And I like to call it the hyper focus or body doubling stream. And we just chill. I get work done. You see what I'm doing, and I do that for a couple hours, 3 or 4 hours. So you can always check out that content. In addition to that, I try to help folks who have OCPD and ADHD traits. So if you have that combination, then definitely check my channel out. And if you are somebody who, honestly, if you're on my channel at all, you need to go subscribe to Molly. So we need to really make sure that we are subscribing to these types of, I don't want to say influencers. Crap. I talked so long and I ran out of water, so my mouth's dry now. But content creators, because our
Mhm.
channels, although they are small, there's a mental health crisis like never before right now. So this is the type of content if you want to show that active support, comments, likes, subscriptions, notifications, just engagement, definitely make sure you attach yourselves to these channels who are talking about these different disorders. And with that, do you have any final words before I close out?
If you're watching over on You Seem Normal, do make sure to subscribe to Shannon over at the OCPD Coach. Something that we talked about today was listening to people who might say similar things but differently. And so things that Shannon talks about, OCPD and ADHD traits and other things might hit you differently than my words do. And there's absolutely a mental health crisis in this country. And it is very important that we talk about mental illness and we talk about our mental well-being. And one way that you can support both of us is to engage with our channels and subscribe and all of those things. And do use us as a resource to ask us questions. We'd be happy to hop on and share our thoughts. Absolutely. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. So with that being said, thank you all for your time. Thank you, Molly, again. And I hope that you keep fighting for your life. Peace.